let's start off with one Databricks theme question. So we're both Databricks MVPs. What would you consider are the top 2 strengths of Databricks for ML? And where do you think it could actually be better?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. So I think everyone mentions Unity Catalog as being a very important thing. It's important for data engineering, but also very important for machine learning, I feel. It really helps with the lineage and the governance. And that's something that Databricks was very, very much lacking before. So that's a big strength that really make Databricks stand out from the competitors. And Databricks provides all the components required for ML. That's probably another thing that makes it stand out. Together with Unity Catalog, it actually makes a big difference. And if we look at the features that Databricks provides for ML ops, I think ML Flow would be the one that actually is most interesting feature that exists for a very long time, and that's the most popular experiment tracking ML registry out there. So it really is much more popular than anything else, and it is developed by Databricks. At some point of time, those two things, I would say, really make big difference. Developer experience, that's really a struggle that I see among ML professionals. So if you are doing ML engineering and data science, you have to package your code. That's pretty much how that goes. So packaging your code in Notebook, it's really tough. If you want to, do proper software engineering, you can't really build Python package when you're in a Notebook. But the other problem is that not everything works in VS Code. So there are many features that just don't work in VS Code. Or if you work with a large data set, and for machine learning algorithms, you typically use pandas or polars or similar packages, and they're not distributed. So if you want to transform your data from PySpark to that library, then you end up with things holding on the driver's memory. And well, if your machine is not large enough, it's gonna crash. So you can't work on the full data set. That's another limitation I see. So you end up switching between Notebook and VS Code, and that experience is very, very painful.
That was frustrating to me.
Yes, yeah, it is frustrating. Well, I would say if Databricks could have VS Code within the workspace, that would actually save a lot of people from struggles. And I wrote a post about it that actually...
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that was pretty popular too.
Yeah, I think it has 70,000 views at the moment. So it's doing pretty well. And many people recognize this problem. So we really need it.
Yeah. Now I'm curious. We don't have to... Well, I think this leads me to 2 questions. One is, we don't have to mention names, but compared to some of the other more direct competitors to Databricks that you've gotten to actually try, how does Databricks fare? Is it like fairly close to them? Is it like you could throw a penny in the air or flip a coin in the air and you could pick one or the other? Or is it still, generally speaking, Databricks comes off in the front or behind?
That's a good question. So I have experience with Azure ML and SageMaker, and these are the tools that I worked with before. And I do prefer Databricks over them. That's my experience with that. And also there was a survey done by Ethical Institute of AI, I believe that's how it's called, about the different components in MLOps and what tools people use. And you clearly see that the products that are created by Databricks, like Delta Lake, or you have MLflow, they really are number one among competitors. And if you look at model serving is number 2 compared to SageMaker is still more popular, and most people have their own tools for model endpoint deployment. So it's some fast API probably deployed somewhere in Kubernetes. That's what you typically see. But if you look at all these features and the platforms that exist, Databricks is at the moment number 1 based on the survey and based on my own experience. It's none of them are perfect, but that's always going to be the case. You can always build your own thing, and that's what I've done in the past as well. We built our own MLOps platform with our own homemade experiment tracking system and model registries. And well, I know how that is, and it's really hard to maintain. So for the teams that don't really have that experience and don't have the manpower, like having a platform like that really, really makes a difference, I feel. And
go ahead.
And I feel that Databricks compared to others at the moment is just superior. And 2 reasons for that is Unity Catalog and model registry that is out there.
Very common things to hear is that the statistic of 85% of all ML projects fail, or AI, or fill in the blank, anything to do with this. Do you find that number, 1, to be fairly accurate? And if it is accurate, why do you think so many of these projects fail?
Well, that's a good question. From my experience, the number is actually lower than that. But the main reason
lower failures or lower
failures, less failures.
Okay.
From my experience, but my experience might be biased. I think from what I've seen in the beginning of data science, like when data science became a thing, people tried to apply machine learning to pretty much all the problems they could see without caring so much for business value. And well, then when you don't care for business value and just want to try things out, well, then this is definitely going to fail. But when it's clear there is business value, and there is a lot of business value, well, these projects typically don't fail, but they are really hard to deploy. And especially when there is no experienced machine learning engineer within the team, and there are just the data scientists that work with notebooks and schedule them within Databricks without any version control and things like that. So this can go wrong in really bad ways. So that's what I see, that it's either data scientists that don't really have much experience in building, proper software engineering systems, and well, then they usually either deploy it in a really bad way or package it somehow or give this notebook to some other team that also doesn't understand anything about machine learning. So these kind of setups typically tend to not fail maybe, but not perform very well. And it also gets really slow. Whenever there is a change required, well, this throwing over the fence situation is not really helping anyone, because data scientists need to change it. Then maybe the way they test it and the infrastructure they work on is different than what this DevOps team or IT team is using. And errors occur, they can't reproduce the errors. So I've seen these situations in the past, and unfortunately many companies are still there, I feel. So it's either that, or companies that are further in their journey, they do have machine learning engineers within the teams, and these engineers, they actually are responsible for bringing things to production and doing it properly. Well, then actually it works pretty well most of the times. It's just organizational structure sometimes doesn't allow for that. There is a lot of politics going on. Also, machine learning engineers trying to convince DevOps teams they know what they're doing. Because there is no trust often between these teams, right? That's what you see.
Would you say that, quote unquote, the statistic of 80% or 85% of ML projects fail is then mainly perhaps driven by citizen ML experts versus, hey, actually dedicated people in the ML space that are doing this day in
Probably.
and day out. So they have that experience of like, okay, we actually know how to avoid XYZ pitfalls pretty quickly.
Yes. So I think if indeed there is experienced professional that understands both data science and engineering, these projects typically don't fail, and also that deliver business value. That's important. But when there is a project that delivers business value, but there is data science team that doesn't know how to integrate it with other with other parts of IT infrastructure, and when there is a straw over the fence situation, well, I wouldn't say it really fails, but it doesn't perform as well as it could, or it fails maybe more often than otherwise. That's for sure, because this cycle of development gets really, really slow. And now we see a very interesting tendency with the AI hype is that software engineers
Gen
start to
AI for
yes,
Gen AI.
indeed, that now we see software engineers that perfectly know all these DevOps principles, bring machine learning models to production, AI systems, I would say, but they have no idea about how machine learning works, right? They have no idea about the fact that if the data changes and nothing else changes, the models can stop performing. And I think we still to see these failures coming, and I expect we will see a lot of them in coming years, to be honest. I've seen really bad scenarios. So yeah, that wouldn't be surprising for me.
Agentic or Agentic, I don't know how to pronounce the word. Agentic AI. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I think we are not really ready for that. Many experts say that this year will be the year of agentic AI. That's what everyone says, but we are not nowhere near there. I think there are three factors. Well, maybe two factors for that. So one, the data quality has always been an issue, and foundations of many organizations are just messed up. So you need to fix the basics first. And well, even though many companies realize it these days, the effort that goes in there is still not enough, because it's very hard to bind data quality to business outcomes. That's what I see. It's still a challenge. It's always been a challenge, and nothing has changed there. The second one is still these disorganized teams, right? So you have data science teams, maybe software engineering teams, and both trying now to do AI. And a lot of these models will fail in one or another way. It's either they are lacking DevOps principles or they are lacking understanding of machine learning. So as long as we don't get that right, also nothing really gonna happen. Many companies are just not ready for it. That's what I see. And it will take another couple of years before everyone will start understanding we need to now invest into LLM ops or AI ops or whatever it's going to be called. So I see that AI hype will translate into another ML ops hype.
Would you say that it's not so much that there's a lack of value of agentic AI, but it's the lack of the framework and perhaps an overconfidence as to, hey, how easy is it to get everything set up in a way that would become trustable and reliable for production work?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I think. So the value is there, definitely. It's just the processes that companies have are messed up. The data is messed up, and there is no framework in place. And in general, any AI system is more complex than standard ML system. It's just more complex. There are more components involved, and we don't have the basic ML models gotten right. We still can't put normal standard machine learning in production in the right way. And what now we're talking about AI agents, I think it's just really utopic thinking that we have these days.
I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into that, and that is, so you mentioned the data quality aspect, and not being ready because of one of the reasons being data quality. I hear different folks saying data quality as a problem for not being ready for ML type work. Can you perhaps dig a little bit into that? Exactly, like, hey, what exactly do you mean by data quality as a hindrance? And perhaps segue into that, like, if whether you think that LLMs can help make that data quality better.
Yeah. So the way how I see it, there are typically data engineering teams that deliver data to the data science teams. And depending on how things are organized within a particular company, it can go bad. Like data engineers change data schema without telling data scientists something has changed, and all start failing. Or they don't have quality checks in place, and the data the data scientists receive, they realize, well, something is broken, and then they have to go back to data engineers. So these problems are still, it's still the most common reason why machine learning models fail. Why suddenly something starts failing? That's because of that, and it hasn't changed in the last years. Maybe a little bit, but still, that problem is still there. But the awareness, I think, has grown at least, and there are different attempts to improve that by also having good data governance practices. But we're still nowhere near that. And as I said, LLM systems are more complex than, like, Gen AI systems are more complex than standard machine learning systems. There are more components involved. Like, depending on how things are implemented, it can be a call to a third-party API. But what if that API is down? Then you need to have a fallback, and you need to have a library that ensures that the way how you call these different endpoints has the same request and response, that it is standardized. But what if that library is broken? You need to have a lot of different things figured out for that to be reliable. And what I see now is that we have more unreliable systems in place than we ever had before.
Yeah, it's kind of what I'm getting from this is, in regular ML type work, there's already a struggle for having safeguards and explainability as to what's going wrong here.
Yes.
So in Gen AI and agentic models and all agentic framework and whatnot, then there's a problem. There's hallucinations. There's all these things happening, wrong outputs. We don't really know where the problem is.
Yeah, so it even becomes much harder to figure out indeed where the problem is coming from, and also monitoring becomes really much harder. What I see now is that a lot of AI applications are just basic classification that is going on. So like text classification to routing to the right agents, things like that. I think that's one of the most popular applications out there. But the way how that problem is treated is often, then there is just one prompt, and that prompt doesn't change over time. So you basically keep calling the same endpoint with pretty much the same prompt all the time. But the prompt must be treated as not something static, but it's something that can be trained, optimized for whatever target that is. And your output of that system must also be monitored over time for the target that you are looking for, like the accuracy of your classification task, F1 score, or whatever other score that every data scientist knows about, because that's how we are evaluating our models. But what I said, if a software engineer does that, they don't think about that at all. They just treat whatever LLM outputs as the ground truth, and no
What could go
monitoring,
wrong?
nothing. Exactly, nothing can go wrong.
A lot of vendors selling AI, ML, all these things. What are some of the cooler projects that you can talk about that you've been a part of, or that you've seen people put into production that you were like, oh yes, this actually is impactful to the business, versus, hey, let's try ML or AI for the sake of trying it out and saying we're an AI company?
Yeah, indeed. That's what we see a lot, that people try to use the coolest technology for a resume looking good, like resume driven development. That's what we see a lot. What I find useful is that there were always some NLP projects in the past, and these NLP projects were focusing on classifying chat transcripts or call transcripts and forwarding things to the right agent. That's like a customer communications channels that you see for banks, telecom, different companies really. And for this application, the simplest one at the moment that would be very successful is replacing the models that we had in place with an LLM, but keep monitoring it the way we are, because LLMs sometimes tend to perform better than what was in production back then. It makes system less reliable, maybe, but because of this reliance on third-party API and the importance of implementing fallback, but it's something that actually makes sense. And for this kind of use cases, typically you need to have a lot of labeled information. So you need to have, and you need to have people actually labeling these chats or calls, and this is really labor intensive. I'm not saying to throw it all into LLM and just take that as a correct answer. No, but you can speed up the process by throwing that first into LLM and then letting a human looking over it and confirming that the output is correct. So actually making it faster. And you see these kind of labeling solutions out there, and I think they're really great. So this actually makes a lot of sense as well. So basically all NLP projects, I think, that we've seen in the past, that already had human in the loop feedbacks and all of that, if they were implemented correctly. Now using LLMs for those make a lot of sense. And in general, if we are talking about agentic AI, you look into, like, if you look at telecom business or banking, you have different procedures in place depending on what customer wants. And usually an agent is executing exactly procedures as written for the agent, like a human agent. But these procedures could be potentially implemented by AI. And then you need less human agents to work on it, because there are already written procedures, and the forwarding to the right agent already happens using machine learning model. So this is one of the most straightforward applications of it that actually make a lot of sense. How did you get into Databricks?
So about 3 years-ish ago, maybe 4 at this point. I lost track of time. I was working in a company, and we had a host of problems with our data stack, as was. We needed to simplify things a lot and reduce the costs. So I looked at Snowflake, I looked at Databricks, I looked at just redoing things inside of that setup that we had. And Databricks was the better option in terms of actually allowing us to, people don't like it when I say it, but it's just the truth. Having less staff and honestly having a better bill on the tech costs. So So I took a lesson from this guy for 16 hours or so on how to use Databricks on Azure. And I started rebuilding our pipelines inside of Databricks, orchestrating everything inside of Databricks, then just connecting it to our BI tool. And our cost, once I wrote a post about it, so my numbers might be off, but our costs went down by like 80% or something like that because
That's
of
a
not
lot.
just on the tech side. Labor wise, we were able to make some changes that we needed to make, really support what the business really needed at that time. And yeah, so that's how it started. And I'm a very opinionated person. So over time, I've written here and there about Databricks, and I currently work at Kythera Labs, which is basically built on Databricks. So we do a lot of Databricks work. We're partner with Databricks, but doing a lot of Databricks work we've built our platform using Databricks, if you will. That's how we serve our data and our technology. So it's just over time, it's just become something that I use more and more. And again, I like writing content, so that just gives me something fun to do too.
Yeah, no, sounds like fun. What I've also seen, we also evolved towards Databricks because we had so many inefficient systems, and doesn't mean that Databricks per se is so cheap for what we do. I think we could have implemented it for the same cost or cheaper, maybe with other technology, but because Databricks has all these components in one, it makes it just simple.
That's the biggest value for me, especially at that point in my career, where I didn't have some of the data engineering skill set as robust as I should have at that point in my life. Everything was in one place.
Yeah, that makes it so much simpler.
Yeah.
And well, in general, if you're in a corporate environment and you want maybe a certain tool that might be better than a component that Databricks has, you have to go through all this vendor compliance stuff. You need to convince that actually worth it, connect it to all your infrastructure, and already that is such a big effort. And
yes.
you
Yeah,
really
well,
start
that's
thinking,
exactly,
is it worth it?
I was like, oh shoot, I was like, hey, I'm gonna be spending some time integrating all of these pieces, learning, gotta learn Airflow, gotta learn DBT, gotta learn this, just so I can make use of really the power of this other underlying platform. And I'm like, that I signed up for Databricks, and again, our sales rep were awesome people. I told them right off the bat, I'm like, hey, I'm never going to be more than $1,000 account at most. And they were awesome with us. And again, while I would have still been configuring this other platform with all these tools, I had already built like the pipelines for like 50 or so different goal tables or something like that. So I
it
appreciate
speeds
that.
it up for sure. Yeah.
And there's something to be said. Like sometimes you want a more specialized tool. There's some
of course.
workflows.
You need to have a good reason though for that. I feel you really need to have a very good reason to get another tool, especially in a corporate environment. And what I see that Databricks people actually know what they're doing, and very often, if I give any critique or think about a feature, they have thought about it already. Very often it is the case, and well, they are smart people, right? So they know they know that, and it might be Databricks will have it at some point, but they have to prioritize it first.
They're very humble about the criticism. That thing, as long as obviously you're not trying to say something mean for the sake of saying something mean. Like I've learned that if you're constructive with what you're saying, like they'll listen. Obviously, doesn't mean that they'll make it their priority in life to get it working, but at least they'll listen to your frustration. And even when you're very critical, like one of the products that I've been the most critical about has been AIBI dashboards. I know the team working on that on dashboards now very, very well. They've always told me like, look, we're working on earning that A+ from you on our platform. So that's their mindset versus, hey, when are you going to be nice and lenient with us about how much progress we've done? So I appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they're ultimately building a product that they want to be able to easily sell. The more easily that they can build that product, so that others know, hey, this is just a clear winner, the better. But that said, I do hope that on the ML side, though, sounds like there's a little bit of work to make it even better.
Yeah, for
Personally,
sure.
I will say, like, personally, like, I know enough about ML to, if I actually spend some time focus, to get at least some basic stuff done.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I'm nowhere near like an expert level like you, but I know enough. But I do know that there's some elements and whatnot that sometimes make it a little bit daunting for someone that doesn't do ML work day in and day out. Some of the elements can be daunting. So hopefully
Yeah, for
they
sure.
do a better job at simplifying that experience. And I think
I hope
there's two
so.
things that they need to work on. I think one is making it so that the more hardcore experts feel like they have all the bells and whistles and little details that they need, as well as for the less advanced users that are still technical enough, like myself, to be able to feel comfortable to be able to go in and work on a project that is moderately complex. So
Yeah, well, I think I've been most critical about serving endpoints because they're really painful to work with, really painful. And I hope that will be improved in the future. But I think there are a lot of design choices that have been made that actually not going to change, but at least certain things need to change. And well, Databricks knows about it, and I hope they prioritize these features as well. And another one is the monitoring. Lakehouse monitoring is already a good step ahead from what it was in the past.
yeah.
But what I see that if you look at ML monitoring, it's either monitoring data drift or monitoring model performance based on the ground truth. And data drift doesn't tell you anything about your model performance because data can drift, but it doesn't affect your models. And when you know the ground truth, it's already too late. So you need to have a model performance estimation included somehow. And well, there are some nice libraries like NannyML, for example, that do that, and I'm really big fan of them. Yeah, but Databricks needs to do something about it. I believe it's not like Databricks is behind others. No one is doing it among big platforms, but that would make a big difference for ML people.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not like that comfortable. Like, hey, I'm number one, and there's other third-party tools people can use for some of this, so we're not going to invest so much. But yeah, that's definitely something that you want to have as a core competency, because it's all fun and games till someone else comes in and says, look, we've heard all these concerns, and we built our own platform that takes care of all this and does all this, and then you don't want to lose that edge. You want to quickly share how people can get started with the framework, or basically you want to share how people can get started with your training program?
Yes, so we have a course on Maven. It actually starts 10th of January, but we will probably have other cohort rounds this year. We don't know yet when exactly. So there is still chance to join this one. It's a 7-week program where we really walk people through all the components of Databricks that are required for machine learning and show that on a real example, very close to the one that you would have in production. And you would have to implement it on your own data set. So you actually have to learn, submit pull requests, and we are going to approve them in order for you to be successful for the week task. And we are always available on Discord for support. And this is something that you don't really see that much in other courses, the support level we provide. So
So it's not like a watch a video and check out, okay, I
No.
completed this course, but it's
You
not
need
like
to
we actually
work.
spend some time like a coworker type reviewing the work that folks are doing.
Yes, definitely.
It's pretty cool. Thank you so very much for the time, Maria.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Talk to you.